Okay, good afternoon, class, and welcome back to Science 10. Today, we're going to carry on talking about ecosystems. Ecosystems. Remember, those are large communities of living and non-living things. So today, we're going to be looking at following the energy in ecosystems. Energy. Where does the energy go? Remember, energy is what is the most important thing in our life and in the universe, and we need to look at how energy is moved around in the ecosystem. We're going to look at a thing called trophic levels. What are the different stages of energy movement? And just briefly looking at what we call a food web. We know what spider webs is. What's a food web? How is it related to each other in the ecosystem? So at the end, you'll have an assignment 6. So it'll be Science 10, assignment 6 in your pickup box or on the website. All right, is there a right or wrong in the animal world? We know that as human beings, when we're brought up, we're taught by our parents, there's certain things that are wrong, like don't put your hand on the stove. That's a wrong thing to do because you're going to get burned. And there's right things, and we're taught that there's good things and bad things to do. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe, but most people in the world believe that life is very important and that we shouldn't go and kill people. Okay? In fact, it is against the law, and you would be put in prison, or in some places in the world, you'd be executed. But in the animal world, although we're animals, is there a right and wrong? Do animals kill for the wrong reason? And generally they don't. Animals will kill for food. It's eat or be eaten. So it's a different set of a different world, right? They don't have an intelligence like we do, like a brain. So they don't know what's right or wrong. So they don't have what's called ethics. Ethics are like rules that we live by, things that we know. Like, we know that lying is not good, stealing is not good, killing is not good, because we don't want those things to happen to us. But in the animal world, it's often kill or be killed. And we always sometimes refer to people who act that way as animals. Okay? They're people that they lock up either in a institution because they're mentally deranged, or they're put into prison. Now, if we look at the animals, we have different levels. You'll see here at the bottom, actually the first thing that we should have down here is the sun, because that's where all energy comes from, right? And the only thing that can make food from the sun's energy is plants, grasses and berries and all kinds of shrubs. And those are the things that we call the first level, the first trophic level, the first trophic level. And we call those producers, because they produce the food, producers. Oops, what we are here. All right, put this down. Try it again. Producers. So they produce the food. They're in the first level, number one. Then we have animals that eat those things. Okay? We have squirrels and mice and deer. They eat the grasses and the berries. So they are the second level, and they're called the consumers. Consumer. And there are different levels of consumers. So we say these are the first or primary consumer. The first consumer, because they're the ones that eat the plants. And then you're going to have animals that eat these animals. You have eagles and hawks that will eat these mice. You'll have wolves that will eat the deer. So they're called secondary consumers. So that is our third level. Now there is another way of talk about them. We can say they're producers, they're consumers, and then we can call these people as carnivores. We'll get to that later. So that is basically like a little food chain, okay, with different levels in it. So this is how energy moves in the ecosystems. We have these feeding levels. Trophic levels are the feeding levels, and it helps us understand how the energy flows. So if I look right back to our first one here, the sun has the most energy. It gives energy to these plants. So the energy is really high here. But a lot of the animals eat the grass. So the energy as you go up, energy level as you go up gets less and less. So as you get to the top, you have to eat a lot of those stuff to live, because the energy level in here is less than this, and the energy level in this is less than this. So this one here has less energy and has to eat a lot of mice to survive. The first trophic level, we call them producers. And producers make their own food. The only thing that can make food is a plant. The second trophic level are primary consumers. They feed off of those things. They feed off the plants. We also refer to them as herbivores. Herbivore means they're plant eaters. Plant eaters. Then we get to the third level. They're called secondary consumers, and they feed off the animals that eat plants. Now, some of those can eat both plants and animals. If you eat an animal, you're called a carnivore. If you eat a plant, you're called a herbivore. So carnivores are meat eaters, herbivores are plant eaters. And there are other ones that eat both, that can eat, like a bear, can eat both a plant, it can eat an animal. They're called omnivores. Just like humans, we can eat both plants, we eat tomatoes, we eat carrots and potatoes, but we also eat meat. So we're called an omnivore. We don't have that in there, but it's written like this, omnivore. Just a different name. But the point is that we have different levels. We got a first level, a second level, a third level. It can actually keep going up higher. We can have other consumers that eat the ones before that. We can call them third, or we can call them tertiary consumers. The name's not that important right now. But at the end, we have the top carnivore, the one at the highest of the food chain. Now, what do you think is at the highest of the food chain in Africa? Which animal is the highest there? A lion. The lion is the top carnivore. Which one do you think is the top carnivore in the forest? Around here, what would you say? A bear, right? And some places on the Arctic would be something like the polar bear. Down here, it's probably the black bear. Out west might be the grizzly bear. It depends on which part of the world you are. So top carnivores are animals that are not eaten by any other animal. Now, when a bear dies or a lion dies, what eats that are usually what they call decomposers. They start to decompose, and they'll have worms and insects and fungus and things like that will eat the body. They're called, and they just make the big circle. So a food chain is just the sequence of organisms showing what eats what. So if you start here and you go this way, there is your plant. What eats the plant? What eats that animal? What eats that animal? Until you get up to the top to be the top carnivore. Okay? And the food web would be, if you have this plant here, it could be eaten by this animal, by this animal, by this animal. And then this animal could be eaten by that animal, and that animal. And then that animal could be eaten by that animal and that animal. And then, of course, we'll have these ones here eaten by this animal and that animal. So they're all interconnected. You think about it in the forest, you'll have things like squirrels, and you'll have things like mice and snakes that'll eat insects and grass, and then you'll have birds that eat the insects, and then you'll have animals that will eat the birds, or other birds, hawks will eat the smaller birds. So there's a lot of interrelationships here, and that's what makes up the food web. So it's all connected like a spider web. So ecosystems are groups of living, remember, biotic and non-living, abiotic things, like air and water and soil are non-living things. A food chain, sequence of what eats what, and a food web is just a whole bunch of food chains. It makes up a number of different food chains. So here are 4 different types of species that would eat. We have decomposers. Those are the things that eat dead things, like worms. Okay, they eat dead things. So we call them decomposers. They're very important because without it, it would just lay there. The decomposers get rid of that. And they return the nutrients to the system. Okay? To release all those nutrients. We have the herbivores that eat the producers. They're the plant eaters. We have the omnivores that eat both plants and animals. And then we have the carnivores that eat other meat eaters, other consumers. And if we look at a food chain, here's our first trophic level, the plants. We have the deer, and then you have the wolves. So we got first, second, and third trophic levels. That makes up a food chain. A food web. Here, it's not just, we have like these little voles that eat the grass. We have mice that eat grass. We have lemmings that eat grass. So there's at least just 3 animals right there, all eating the same thing. And then we have the voles here that are eaten by the moose and eaten by wolves. And we have the mice that can be eaten by wolves, and also the deer could be eaten by wolves. We have a lemming, which could be eaten by wolves, and also the elk eats the grass, which could be eaten by wolves. So some animals eat more than one thing, and that makes up the whole food web. Energy flows from one to the other. When you think about it, here's our sun. 100% of the energy comes in. When things break apart, they decompose, some of the energy is gone out to things that eat, primary consumers, say the squirrel or the mice that might eat grass, the squirrels that eat the nuts and stuff. Some of that energy is gone into that consumer, but a lot of the rest of it is just lost. Okay. So we know that energy can convert it into different forms, and we don't have to worry about this law. We should take that out. So the important point here, and I underline it, that is all energy on the earth starts in plants and goes up along the food chain, and it gets less and less as you go up. So if you look at it here, consumers like deer, they're eating the grass, they die. Bacteria starts to eat their flesh, their dead flesh. A lot of that is lost, it starts to rot. The heat is lost in the animal body. A lot of these mushrooms start to grow into that organic material that decays into the grass. Anytime something is being eaten, there's also heat being lost into the air. Okay, so it just changes, it keeps moving around. All that energy keeps moving around. Keeps moving around. Okay? They call these energy pyramids. So we have here the first level, which would be the plants. That's where most of the energy is. So we have to have more plants than anything else. If we destroy our trees and our grasses and our plants, then we're all going to starve, because the things that live off plants will die. If we need to have beef to eat and chickens and food and pork and pigs and that and pork, they have to eat the grass. If there's no grass, then they die, then we have no food. So the first trophic level has the most energy. The second trophic has less energy. And as you go up the pyramid, there's less and less energy. They use this as a measure. Kilojoules of, there's 86,000, there's 14,000, 1,688. As you go up, you get to the owl, 88 kilojoules of energy. So it decreased. The energy decreased as you went up. So the number of organisms at the top are going to be a lot smaller than down here. The amount of energy people use each day. You can see here, most of it is used for industrial purposes. And long time ago, we were just hunter-gatherers. Just went out and, gathered our food from our trees and stuff, and they only needed this amount of energy. But as time goes on, because we all live in the cities now, and we all use electricity for our lights, for our cars, we need fuel for it. Everything needs more and more energy. The amount of energy has increased drastically. So back again to our food web. This is one that's in the desert. We have things that are in the ground, like cactus that grow into the soil. Okay? And then these things that live off of the things that grow in the ground. We have all of these insects and lizards and rodents like rats. And then the snakes that are eating the rats. We have lizards and scorpions and tarantulas that eat on the insects. And then these things like snakes and lizards, they're eaten by foxes and hawks. So as you go up, more and more animals are being eaten by other animals. So the last thing you're going to do is, this is the sheet that's going to be in your assignment. You're going to go through the notes that I just gave you, and you're going to match up. For instance, here it says, match the following definition: a consumer. The consumer, you're going to have to match it with something in column B. Now, does a consumer eat only plant material? Does it break down dead bodies? Does it eat both plants and animals? Does it eat producers? Does it eat only animals? Or does it manufacture food using sunlight? What do you think a consumer does? Remember, the consumer is on the second level. The consumer would eat producers. So that's where we match that. We have to put eat producers. And then we look, what's a carnivore? What this? They eat only meat, so they eat only animals, right? So it says here, eat only animals. And so on. There's one there called a herbivore. Herbivore eats only what? Plants. So then you would use that. Eats only plant material. And so on. Okay? So that's it. Just complete that relationship in ecosystems. And tomorrow we'll see how you're doing. We'll look at maybe carrying on with things about we're going to move into pretty soon into a different unit, but see how we do with this one first.